Is he conscious?
We need an ambulance.
Ma'am, listen to me.
He's not conscious.
He's not conscious at all?
No. We need someone right now.
Is he breathing? Listen to me. Calm down. I'm going to help you, okay? Is he breathing?
I'm upstairs, and he's downstairs. I don't know.
4 men decide to call it a night and go to bed in their Washington, D.C. home. About an hour later, one of those men is dead. 3 obvious suspects, so this case was solved promptly, right? Hello, true crimerers. This is the case of Robert Eric Wone. Viewer discretion is advised. Please make sure you are subscribed to the channel if you have not done so already. Thank you. Now into the case. Robert Wone was born on June 1st, 1974 in New York City. New York! Yeah, of all places. Robert was a 4th-generation Chinese American. He grew up in a really loving home with his brother Andrew. Really good parents, took really good care of him. You know, they had money. Everything was great. Robert, he excelled in school, to say the least. He would attend Xaverian High School, which is located in Brooklyn, New York. I'm not sure if I said the school's name right. But he graduated with honors, and he was also the class valedictorian that year. He would then attend the College of William and Mary. I've never heard of that school before. And that school is located in Williamsburg, Virginia. He would go there as a James Monroe Scholar. That just sounds very fancy and very smart. At that school, he was also a part of the Honors Society. He was also very heavily involved in student government. He graduated from that college in 1996, but he certainly was not done. He would then go to the University of Pennsylvania's law school, where he got his Juris Doctor degree, and then he finished that schooling by 1999. Very soon after that, he took on the role of a law clerk of Judge Raymond A. Jackson of the Federal District Court, or the Eastern District of Virginia. After that, he went on to work in commercial real estate law, and he did so for a D.C. law firm, which was called Covington and Burling. During all of this, he was serving as general counsel for the OCA, or the Organization of Chinese Americans. Despite his very busy, very productive life, he still managed to find time for love. He married the love of his life. Her name is Catherine Ellen Yu, which would then become Catherine Wone, of course, after they got married. And they got married on June 7th, 2003. The two of them, they owned a home in Fairfax County, Virginia. They did not have any children. Sometime in May or June or so of 2006, Robert would leave Covington and Burling because he was actually hired as general counsel for Radio Free Asia. He was very heavily involved in his culture, in his community, very specifically in the Asian community circles. He was a contributor to the Museum of the Chinese in America. He was president-elect of the Asia American Pacific Bar Association, where he was also the treasurer. He also did pro bono work, and he was also involved in helping students further, their education. Good Lord, this guy was very busy, very active. He was certainly someone who was just all about the community and helping where he could. And he was just doing what he loved doing. He was a super involved human being, and he seemed like a really awesome guy. And with all of that, from what I can tell when I read about him, he seemed to have maintained a very humble attitude. He always came off as just being very fortunate. He was never about himself. He was respectful. He was a very giving person, not only with money, but also with his time and his knowledge. Robert Wone was just the definition of a really good dude. And, in 2006, everything was just going so perfect for him. Until the night of August 2nd, 2006. Back when Robert was attending the College of William and Mary, he met another student there who was about a year or two, I think, ahead of him. And his name was Joseph Price. But even after school, the two of them kept in touch. They were good friends still. Joseph Price got his undergraduate degree in public policy in 1993. He then got his law degree from the University of Virginia Law School. He was also one of the founders of Equality Virginia, which was an association or an advocacy group for the LGBTQ community in all of Virginia. He would work at a law firm called Arendt. He did so from 1998 until 2008. He basically had to leave the law firm after charges were pressed against him involved with this particular story. He is a gay man, and at the time of the story, he had a domestic partner, and his partner's name is Victor Saborsky. Yes, domestic partner. This was 2006. This was before us gays were considered full human beings. We were only partial human beings with, some rights, Price was wealthy. He had plenty of money to go around. He owned a few homes. This included, he owned a row house in Washington, D.C., which he, of course, shared with his partner. They also had I guess you can call him a third wheel, named Dylan Ward. Dylan Ward was like a previous lover of Joseph, but I guess they broke it off. But now they were involved, I guess, in some kind of throuple, some sort of domestic relations between the three of them, even though Dylan Ward had his own room, while Joseph and Victor had a room together, because they were like the actual couple, and Dylan was just sort of involved. It would describe it as like a polyamorous relationship. So now, on the night of August 2nd, 2006, Robert Wone was working in the D.C. area. He worked pretty late that night, and he had a very early morning meeting. So he called up his friend, Joseph Price, because he knew he had a place in D.C. Can I crash there tonight so I can just, get back to my meeting quickly in the morning? Joseph said, of course you can. So Robert, who was 32 years old, at 10:20 p.m., he called his wife, and they spoke for just a few minutes. They said goodnight. They said, I love you. And then they hung up the call. Robert then called Joseph back to say, hey, I'll be there in just a few minutes. And then Robert arrives at Joseph Price's home at about approximately 10:30 p.m. And they had a guest bedroom with a pull-out sofa, and that's where Robert was going to sleep that night. The row house was located on Swan Street Northwest. And that particular night, all three normal occupants of the home were there. According to Joseph, when Robert arrived, they had a brief conversation. They had a glass of water. But Robert was like, listen, I'm really tired. I want to go to bed because I have to get up early for this meeting. And so Robert would adjourn to the guest room to go to sleep. And then allegedly the other three members of the house also went to their rooms and went to bed as well. But shortly after Robert arrived, one of the neighbors would report hearing a very loud scream as if someone was screaming for some help. And the scream was definitely coming from Joseph Price's house. The witness did not get a look at the clock when this happened, but he does remember the scream happened during the 11 p.m. news, which ran from 11 p.m. to 11:35 p.m. And he said it was probably sometime, in the middle-ish of all of it. So the scream occurred within like a 30-minute window of time. And then at 11:49 p.m., Victor Saborsky calls 911. And here is just a brief, 2-minute clip of that 911 call. It's like a 7-minute call that you can hear on YouTube. But here's just a portion of it.
DC Emergency 911 Operator 6752. Do you need police, fire, or ambulance?
Yes, immediately. We need an ambulance.
What's wrong, ma'am?
We had someone that was in our house, evidently, and they stabbed somebody.
Okay, somebody's inside the house now?
I don't know. We heard.
Are they bleeding? You see someone bleeding?
Someone is bleeding in our house.
Okay, where's they bleeding from?
I think in the stomach.
In the stomach? Is he conscious? Calm down for me. I'm going to send some help, okay? Female or male?
It's a male. He's a friend of ours. He was spending the night with us.
Okay, and who was the person that stabbed him? Do you know? Is he conscious?
We need an ambulance.
Ma'am, listen to me.
He's not conscious.
He's not conscious at all?
No. We need someone right now.
Is he breathing? Listen to me. Calm down. I'm going to help you, okay? Is he breathing?
I'm upstairs, and he's downstairs. I don't know.
Okay, who's downstairs with him?
My partner is downstairs with him right now. He told me to go upstairs and call the police immediately. I just went to the stairs.
Okay, who's the person? Okay, I'm sending paramedics and the police. Okay, who's the person that stabbed him?
I don't know. We think it's somebody with an intruder in the house. We heard the chime at the door.
And it's 15, ma'am, calm down. 1509 Swan Street, Northwest. Am I correct?
Yes, it is.
The person that stabbed him, is he still in the home?
I don't know.
So, he called to report that his friend, who was staying the night there, they found him stabbed in the guest bedroom. And that he wasn't sure if he was even conscious or awake or even breathing. He didn't know. The call, as you can kind of tell, he is frantic on the call. You can hear he's panicked. He's borderline crying probably. But when police actually arrive to the house with the ambulance and all that, the three men suddenly appear very, they described eerily calm. They really weren't showing much emotion. They weren't showing much of a reaction to their friend allegedly being stabbed in one of their rooms. All three men also appeared to be wet, as if they had just literally gotten out of the shower or had just washed off somewhere in some capacity. When paramedics arrive in the guest bedroom, Robert is apparently in some kind of upright sitting position, but he is unconscious. He's not, awake at all. He does have apparently like a faint heartbeat at the time, and he is loaded into the ambulance and driven to the nearby hospital, which was George Washington University Hospital. And at 12:24 a.m., sadly, he is pronounced dead. Now, some strange notes about Robert. They noticed that he, too, was wet. He also looked like he had just gotten out of the shower or had just been washed. This is before the ambulance took him, of course. And what's most strange is that later it would be found out that he was, in fact, stabbed. He had virtually no blood on him. He had no blood on his chest, no blood on his stomach. There were a few drops of blood on the bed sheet that he was laying on top of, which police obviously would take that sheet and collect. But the coroner would report that he was, in fact, stabbed 3 separate times. He was stabbed in the chest and also stabbed in the abdomen. They were deep wounds and forceful wounds. It's very strange that there was no blood on him. What made matters more strange is that it appeared he had taken a shower. So now they're wondering if whoever did this, did they clean him after the fact? The coroner noted there were no signs of a struggle. He had 0 defensive wounds. It appeared he did not put up a fight at all. So he was just stabbed 3 times without fighting. The coroner also notated that there were puncture wounds on his body. He had some on his chest, on his neck. He also had one on his foot and on his hand. These would indicate puncture wounds like from a needle of some kind. So that prompted them to, of course, run a toxicology report, which would come back with no toxins in his system. He had no alcohol in his system. He had no drugs and nothing. So they began to wonder if perhaps he was dosed with some sort of untraceable paralytic to render him immovable. But there was no physical evidence of anything in his system, so that was literally just speculation. The coroner also notated that Robert Wone was sexually assaulted. Is it possible that one of these men, because they were all gay men, or two of them or all three of them, had they tried to make some advances at Robert, who was a straight married man? And he said no, and they said, well, we're not taking no for an answer. Possible, I guess. They did find Robert's own ejaculate on his body, but nobody else's. When police combed through the house, they found a treasure trove of toys, if you catch my drift. One of these toys was a kind of a stim machine that apparently could make a man produce ejaculate, even if they were unconscious. So it's certainly possible that device was used on Robert. Jesus, God. But police would have to prove that some sort of, sexual motive was in play here and that these three men were involved in his death. Because just because something looks and seems a certain way does not mean that it is a certain way. But it is odd that there are 4 people in this house, 4 grown adults. One of them is murdered, while a neighbor claims they heard a loud, blood-curdling scream that none of the other 3 men in the house actually heard. Dylan Ward would tell police that he was awoken to the sound of the door chime, like when the door would open or close, like some alarm system or whatever. That woke him up, but apparently not a blood-curdling scream. If this was Robert's scream, how on earth did they not hear it? How did they not do anything for at least bare minimum of 15 minutes? Because if you think that the scream was heard at the very end of the 11 p.m. news, and then the 911 call was made at 11:49, that's a 15-minute window of time where... Why didn't they do anything? None of the men had an answer for that. Little sus. In terms of evidence, the house appeared very clean. It didn't really smell of chemicals per se, but it did look like it was cleaned. The police would take chunks of the wall, chunks of the flooring. They would take pieces from the staircase, and various other things from the house to test for evidence, because there should have been blood in this room at least. There should have been blood on him, but there wasn't. And there wasn't blood on the floor. There was a few drops of blood on the blanket. But that's it. So obviously something was cleaned. Cadaver dogs were brought in, and they did their sniffing around. They hit on 2 places. One was a small amount of blood residue found inside the trap of the dryer vent. There were also clothing items that were being dried in the dryer when police arrived. By the way, none of the clothing would come up with any evidence. But the blood in the vent would indicate that there were possibly blood on the clothes that was being cleaned off. The other location where the scent dogs hit was outside on their back porch. There was a little drain pipe that the dog went, something's here, which would indicate possibly, because there's a little bit of water on the ground there as well, next to the hose, could indicate that someone did try to hose themselves off on the back porch, and if there was blood, it went into the drain. But I don't think they actually found blood evidence, or at least anything substantial, in the drain itself. It's just that the dog picked up a scent there. Allegedly, there was also evidence that on Robert Wone's BlackBerry, there were 2 drafts of emails that were going to be sent, that were never actually sent. But the coroner would determine the time of death was likely before the timestamps of these emails. So did someone access his email after the fact to maybe try to create some sort of story? Well, nothing really came of that either. What about the murder weapon? Well, a knife, was found on the nightstand next to where Robert was killed. The knife had blood on it, and I don't really know how they would have determined this, but it appeared to them that blood was deliberately smeared onto the knife, and the blood did not appear that it was naturally on the knife if you were stabbing someone with it. They said it looked like it was placed there after the fact. The coroner also couldn't state for certainty that that particular knife was the murder weapon. In Dylan Ward's bedroom, there was a knife set. It was missing a knife, and it was not the knife that was found next to the on the nightstand. But he said, well, that knife block had been exchanged hands many times over the years, and knives got moved around, and because I moved around a lot. And he said that I think my friend who lives in Seattle has the knife that looks like it's missing. So they apparently were able to obtain that knife, and the coroner couldn't determine if that was the murder weapon. It didn't have any traces of blood on it. So the knife was questionable, at the very least. After a thorough investigation, the police would determine that the crime scene was absolutely tampered with. Evidence was tampered with. Evidence was likely destroyed. Evidence was likely removed from the home. It did appear that the house had been cleaned. So it all looked very, very suspicious on the 3 men who lived there. But that was all mainly speculatory. That was not founded in actual physical evidence or proof, because they really didn't have any of it. They didn't have like fingerprints on the knife. Even if they did have fingerprints on the knife, it would have been a knife that belonged in the home, likely, that all of them would have touched at some point. So it wouldn't have necessarily led to anything major, maybe. Well, what do the 3 men say happened? Well, they were all asleep, so they assumed that the house was burglarized. Someone broke into the house through the unlocked back door. I guess we left it unlocked. They came in and they just stabbed our friend for some reason. There was no signs of forced entry. Nothing was rummaged through. No ransacking was done, and nothing was really stolen either. So potential robbery gone wrong? Maybe. It's possible. But that was the 3 men. That was their theory on what happened. So, unbelievably, despite 3 solid suspects in the house that night, police had nothing to really say, we're going to arrest you and charge you with murder. They had nothing. All of the evidence was very minimal at most. They could not say that either all 3 of these men or one of the 3 or 2 of the 3 for sure committed this murder. They needed to have proof beyond a reasonable doubt. They didn't have that. They didn't really have a solid motive other than it was possibly sexually motivated, but 3 months goes by. Joseph and Victor are out on vacation. They're not in the house. And Dylan Ward is either moved on to a new place or he wasn't there either on this particular evening that this next thing happened. But one night, someone broke into the house, stole about $7,000 worth of electronics, and then fled. The house was not entered by force. There was nothing damaged. Nothing was kicked in, no windows broken, no window screen slashed. It appeared that they had gotten in with a key. And they had an alarm system in the home at this point, and the alarm code was put in. Well, that's what luck that these burglars had to have the key to get in and to have the code to stop the alarm. These random people just got so lucky. Except it wasn't so random. So, police investigate, and they found that there were several of the electronic items that were stolen. They had been pawned almost immediately after the robbery. And the night of the robbery, a man was arrested for stealing a car. A man by the name of Michael Price had stolen his friend's Mercury Sabre, but he was caught pretty quickly. In the vehicle were more electronics that were stolen from Joseph Price's house. And in the car, they also found a crack pipe and learned that Michael was very much into drugs, and he used the money from pawning of all the stolen stuff to buy more drugs. Wow, what a crazy coincidence. A man with the last name Price gets into the house of another man by the name Price, and he has the guy's key, his alarm code, and he steals from him. Wow, what a small world, except it's not, because Michael is Joseph's brother. Michael is obviously arrested, and he's charged with a whole bunch of burglary charges. But this just seems odd. The detectives now wonder, okay, was this a staged robbery for either Joseph to pin this previous attempted break-in / murder on his own brother, maybe? Or was this staged robbery planned by Joseph to show police, look, it's possible that someone could have broken into my house that night and killed someone. But why would he have the key? Why did you give him the key? If he's this cracked out crazy person who's in and out of jail, why are you giving him a key to your place? He didn't really have an answer for that either. It just seems so coincidental to me that his own brother breaks into his house 3 months after a murder took place, where the brother says, oh yeah, someone broke in and killed him. And listen, to be fair, it certainly could have happened that way. It could have been an intruder had done it. I don't know. It's just very crazy to me that 3 other people wouldn't have heard a thing if that was happening. But it is possible, so. But this little event, this robbery, kind of pushed police to finally kind of have their own understanding of what they think happened. And so they could not place murder charges on either of the men. But they did in 2008. They charged all 3 of these men. And Dylan Ward at this point has now moved to Florida, Miami-Dade. And he was living in a house that was also owned by Joseph Price. Nice. But they were charged with obstruction of justice and conspiracy to commit obstruction and planting evidence, disposing of evidence, that kind of thing. So that's pretty much the most they could actually charge them with, because they had, I guess, the bare minimum of evidence to show that it was possible that they at least tried to obstruct justice. But again, not murder charges. The 3 men would then go on trial together on June 17th, 2010. The prosecution laid out all the evidence they had, even if it was slim amount, but it was not strong enough. The judge in this case had no choice but to find all 3 men not guilty of all charges. It is important, however, that she said this. She believes, personally, that the 3 men know exactly who killed Robert Wone. She says it seems clear that in some capacity they know who did it, or possibly one of them's responsible. But then she said, but there is not enough evidence to show beyond reasonable doubt of this. This is just a personal belief of hers. That likely 1 or 2 is covering for the other one, or one of them is covering for the 2 of them, or all 3 of them did it together. But there's just no way of knowing who, what, when, where, why. Unfortunately, you need this pesky thing called proof to convict someone. even though I think we can kind of look at this and go, okay, it's pretty obvious one of these men was probably involved. Can't say it for sure, but likely. It does go to show that justice is working the way it's supposed to, because you do need proof. We can't just go off of like our gut feelings or what we think happened. You have to prove it. And sometimes it hurts the case, because despite you knowing what you think happened, you can't prove it. You have to let these people go. It's also important to note that these 3 men can still be charged with murder because they were not acquitted of murder charges. So if there ever is a situation that comes up where they do finally have proof, witness statements, something, they can lay charges on them for murder. Robert's widow, Catherine, she did file a wrongful death lawsuit against all 3 men, and they settled. They settled on an agreement, and they settled on a sum of money, which is undisclosed to the public. The 3 men, in a wrongful death lawsuit, decided to settle and pay her something. So here's a big issue that I think I have, and it's in the timeline of events. Robert spoke to his wife at 10:20 p.m., and that's confirmed. And he was perfectly fine. He was alert. He was happy. He said, "I love you. Goodbye." And they can confirm that he was not actually even at the house yet. So Robert gets there, around 10:30. By 11:54, the ambulance arrives at the house. So between 10:20 and 11:54, there is an hour and 34 minutes for Robert to get there, have a quick chat with them, say, "Hey, we're going to bed." They get ready for bed, go into bed. Then Robert somehow either gets pinned down and drugged, or drugged and then whatever, however the order it may have gone in. Stabbed 3 times after being sexually assaulted and having toys used on him to, have him do what he did. Then clean him off, as well as any blood there may be around the crime scene. Stage the knife, get rid of the other knife somehow. Then the 3 of them also shower or wash themselves off. So all of this would have had to happen in an hour and 34 minutes. It is certainly possible, I suppose, but it's a really narrow window of time for all of that. So I'm kind of like where the courts are, right? Like, I feel in my heart that at least one of these men is guilty of killing him. I don't feel like it was an intruder. I'm more than happy to be wrong, but and I could be wrong, but it's also like, I don't see enough to say they did. I think this is more like, I want to think they did, because that's what's the easy answer. But is it the answer? As of now, Robert Wone's murder is an unsolved mystery. It's a cold case, and I hope that one day Catherine, his widow, and the rest of his family can get the closure they so desperately deserve and they need. Maybe one of these men could just come forward and say, "All right, here's what happened." But who knows? If they are guilty, they did a damn good job at cleaning up the right things that they needed to clean up. If you have any information on the murder of Robert Wone, please contact the Washington, D.C. Police Department. You can do so anonymously. You can also email them anonymously to provide anything you may know about this case. Like I always say, the tiniest, smallest detail could break it wide open. Murderers love to talk. Anything. So please help this family get closure if you have the answers. But that is it for this case. I hope you found it interesting. As usual, if you want to see more cases from me, I have a whole bunch here on YouTube. I also have made many compilation videos of all the cases I've covered over on TikTok. You can find them all in my playlists here on my channel. Please subscribe if you like true crime. Also, if you want, please give me a follow on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, which is all linked below in the link tree in my description. If you have a case you would like me to cover, please send me an email. It's also listed below. Please go to my link tree, check my case list first, make sure the name isn't on there. If it is, please do not email it to me. I pick the cases I cover at random. It'll get covered eventually. I just don't know when. But if you don't see the name, then please just email me the name, where it happened, and when it happened, and I will eventually add it to my list. If you would like to support me in any way, we do sell merch. We sell t-shirts and hoodies and a wine glass and other little things here and there. We do ship internationally, so wherever you are, Adam, who makes my merch himself, he will ship it to you wherever you reside. Lastly, if you have a Discord account and you want to join my Discord server, the link is also in my link tree. Please be over the age of 18 or you will be kicked out. It's a very chill, quiet Discord. It's not a crazy one, but feel free to join in and just chat. It's a little weird sometimes, but it's fine. But that is it, True Crimeroonies, for this little tiny video. Not really tiny, but it's a video. I will leave you with an ending. Was that good? Is that a good way to end the video?